What's up, guys? Swift here, and today I want to talk about why I mention relative athletic scores so much. This is something I talked about extensively 2 years ago when we hired Ryan Poles. But in the last 2 years or more, I have a ton of new subscribers and 2 more years of Ryan Poles data to analyze, and I wanted to remind people why I take these RAS scores so seriously. Ryan Poles spoke about it early on after he was hired. He's always been very open and honest about most of the things he tells the press, but he stated very clearly how much he values athleticism. This year, he's talked about different flavors in the NFL draft, and it's clear that if there is one flavor that our general manager prefers, it's athleticism. Ryan Poles has now made 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, and then one very high pick in the third round. Let's look at the 6 highest players that Ryan Poles has drafted since taking over as Chicago Bears general manager. The highest player he's picked is Darnell Wright with the number 10 pick. He had a 9.68 RAS score. The second highest player he's ever drafted is Kyler Gordon at pick number 39. He had a 9.69 RAS score. The third highest player that Poles has drafted is Jaquan Brisker, who came in at pick number 48 and scored a 9.11 on the RAS. And then last year, Ryan Poles made 3 picks within 9 spots of the draft, taking Jervon Dexter at pick number 53, who scored a 9.53 on the RAS, Tyreek Stevenson at pick 56, who scored an 8.93, and Zach Pickens at pick 64, who scored a 9.23 on the RAS. But we can go even further than that. Let's look at the players that Ryan Poles has traded for. Starting off with Montez Sweat, who's the most athletic player on our entire roster, scoring a 9.9 on the RAS. DJ Moore is another athletic freak, scoring a 9.65 on his RAS. Even Ryan Bates scored incredibly high on the RAS, coming in at a 9.57. And then let's not forget about Chase Claypool. We all know he was an athletic freak, scoring a 9.98 as well. Another reason why Ryan Poles took a shot on that guy, but not every freak athlete works out. But when you look at the data, it's not hard to figure out what Ryan Poles really likes. It's athleticism, and he takes it serious when he's scouting these players. Even continuing on to look at some of his biggest free agent signings, Tremaine Edmonds, Rasheem Green, Gerald Everett all scored awesome on the RAS. He wasn't able to be as picky in free agency, though, but he still seems to have a baseline that guys have to be athletic. Even Kevin Byard, DeAndre Swift, Nate Davis, and others are athletic enough. But you don't have to go far to see it. Even look at Kari Blasingame. The fullback he signed was also extremely athletic. Even the undrafted free agent quarterback who became a fan favorite last year. Did you know Tyson Bagent scored a 9.01 on his RAS? Just go through the list of players he's added. I'm showing them all on the screen here. And you can see that Ryan Poles values athleticism. He places an extreme importance on this. There are only a few players that he's brought in that have really been exceptions to this rule. A couple of players he signed who are not very athletic, but get the job done. Those guys are TJ Edwards, Demarcus Walker, and Andrew Billings. You can even throw Yannick Ngakwe in that mix as well. They are all hardworking, high character guys who I consider more of glue guys than stars in the NFL. But when it comes to the NFL draft, especially the early round picks, Ryan Poles clearly values high RAS scores. The lowest RAS score he's drafted in the first 2 rounds was Tyreek Stevenson, who scored an 8.97. So when it comes to evaluating players for the draft and what Poles looks for, one of the boxes he almost always checks first is athleticism. There are other critical factors that change for every position, such as arm length and height and weight, but athleticism and character are two things that Ryan Poles is always going to pay attention to. He wants guys who love football, but if he could find an athletic freak that loves football, he's going to do what he can to try to bring that guy to the Chicago Bears. I've always valued athleticism myself when scouting players, but guys like Chase Claypool, they serve as strong reminders that players need more than just athletic ability to make it in the NFL. And then guys like TJ Edwards and Andrew Billing serve as great examples that players can be great without having off the charts athleticism. But when it comes to Ryan Poles, especially in the NFL draft and high round picks, he's made it clear that he wants guys with high RAS scores. He loves those athletic freaks. So, when scouting players for the Bears, I try to waste as little time as possible scouting guys that I do not believe Poles will like. The more NFL drafts we get through, the more familiar I will become with this process. Trying to find a baseline here, we first take a quick peek at Ryan Poles' first two NFL drafts. So far, he's only drafted three players total that had less than 8.25 scores. Those three guys were Velus Jones Jr., Treston Ebner, and Jatiri Carter, all drafted in his first class. And only one of those guys came before round six. And then last year in 2023, we didn't have a single guy that was drafted who scored less than 8.25 on the RAS score. So it's pretty safe to say that Ryan Poles is going to draft guys who score over an 8.25 or at least an 8, with most likely all four of his picks this year. The incredible thing is there's good news. There's an insane 30 plus offensive lineman this year that scored over an 8.0 on the RAS score. And that's with a lot of guys not testing, especially the top three centers. But even more, 32 wide receivers scored over an 8.0 as well. That's without Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malachi Corley testing. I imagine Marvin Harrison Jr. would easily score over a 9, which would give us 33 receivers in total in this year's class that Ryan Poles would consider drafting. I made a list the other day of my favorite wide receivers and offensive tackles in this year's class. Now I'm going to show you a similar list with a couple of changes and add RAS scores to the list. This should help us find who the Bears will draft this year, right? Well, kind of. But I just mentioned there are 30 plus offensive linemen and 33 receivers that scored over an 8.0 on the relative athletic score. So Ryan Poles is still going to be able to find guys he likes at each position of need, even if he trades down. There are also a ton of guards and centers, and around 20 total edge rushers coming in with a score over 8.0 as well. It's a good year for all of the positions that the Bears need to address. Right now, the biggest issue is we only have 4 draft picks. But my biggest point of making this video today is I talk about the relative athletic scores a lot, and I probably said RAS score enough in this one video to drive you guys nuts. But I just wanted to take a couple minutes to kind of show you guys Ryan Poles' history and why I believe that this scoring matters. I don't care what other GMs are looking for. I only care what Ryan Poles is looking for because he's the Chicago Bears GM. And to him, the RAS scores matter. So to me, they matter as well. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about them with almost every player we bring in or guys we even look at. I appreciate everyone who watches. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. I have some bigger videos on the way, including 2 that I believe will be must watch. Stay tuned, guys. Remember to hit that like button for me. And until next time, bear down.